Senate Transportation Committee. I believe we have 10 and possibly 11 bills before us today. And with that, Clerk, if you would open the rolls to take attendance. Oh, okay. Thank you so much. We'll start off, of course, with our non-members. And first on my list, Senator Normand.
Can't have nice things. Got it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, I have one of the most momentous transportation bills that you will deal with this year. And it is Senate Bill 116, and it actually is very simple. Some of you may not be aware under Title 46.2 of the Virginia Code that it provides that bicyclists must adhere to the traffic controls that are imposed upon motor vehicles, so they do not enjoy any privileged class. And this bill is very simple. There are those who enjoy the activity and exercise of riding bikes, particularly in clubs, and they don't want to interrupt their aerobic exercise. And I understand that because I used to be a compulsive runner and would get quite annoyed when I had to stop and interrupt my aerobic efforts. What this provides is that if someone who is riding a bike treats a stop sign as just a yield sign, then they are subject to a $500 fine and their bike will be impounded for 6 months. Why is that here, Mr. Chairman?
We would like to know.
I'm going to share that with you. Some of you have been around long enough to remember a gentleman by the name of Governor Warner, and he and I worked very hard together with many of you to create the Capitol Bike Trail, and I happen to live right off of that. And at every intersection on that trail is a stop sign, and it looks just like a stop sign on the highway. I'm also very privileged that I only live about a mile from Jamestown Settlement, and many of the biking groups go there to rally because they can park in that parking lot. And all they have to do is go about a mile or so, and then they can get to the Capitol Trail if they choose to use it. And so I have the privilege of these bicyclists coming by my home, which really is very invigorating, and that's not my issue. What does concern me is the main entrance and exit to this subdivision intersects with Route 5 at the Capitol Trail. So what these groups, and I'm not talking one or two, I am talking sometimes 20, 30 plus, and they will come to that intersection, and before they get to it, they will get 3 or more abreast, and they will have a trailer. And the trailer's job is to sort of drive in the middle of the road to be sure that traffic cannot interfere or pass them as they approach the intersection. And then as they approach the intersection, the trailer will take his bike and stop it perpendicular across the road to prevent traffic from the intersection from getting around them. And they will put another one who is perpendicular in front of the group so that traffic turning off of the main highway cannot turn so the bicyclists can get through. Well, that's more than a minor irritation. But then they also, when they get on the Capitol Trail, a stop sign does not mean stop. It means I want to get through it and beat the car. Fortunately, I bought a new vehicle that, unlike my 2008 Dodge, it has 300,000 miles on it, has really good brakes. And just before I introduced this bill, I had turned off of Route 5 of this major highway into my subdivision and had to cross the path of the Capitol to Capitol Trail where the 2 stop signs. I had made the turn and probably was 6 or 7 feet from where a biker would come through, and he did not stop. And fortunately, this car has extraordinary brakes on it, and I probably missed him by 6 inches. And as he drove by, and I did not say anything, I did not honk my horn or flash my lights, he turned to me and went, I don't know what that means. I thought it was his IQ, but on it. And so it really is annoying in the fact that they feel that they do not have to adhere to the traffic control devices because they don't want to interrupt their aerobic exercises. So, Mr. Chairman, I am a pragmatist. I know it would shock Senator Favola, but I am a pragmatist on it. And I don't know how you feel, but I feel much better, and I ask you to strike the bill.
Oh, my God.
Good.
Not be serious.
I was going to have to.
All right. Well, do we have a motion to strike the bill? So moved.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Newman.
before we go, I know the senator was a bit lighthearted, but I mean that is an organized effort to break the law. I mean that really is it. So maybe what we should do is within our study group just think about over the next year. I mean, when you have a coordinated effort to break the law, maybe there's something. This may not be it, and this would catch a young man, a child, or something that loses a bike for 6 months. But it is something maybe the Mr. Chairman could think about over the next year, see how this circumstance can be dealt with in the future.
Because the chairman of this committee foresaw the moment when he received a desperate phone call from an 8-year-old whose bike has been impounded and wonders when he could ever earn $500 to pay his fine. So I appreciate the gentleman's offer to strike the bill. Do we have a second?
I have a substitute motion.
Substitute motion.
Substitute motion is to make him stay here and defend his bill. I withdraw my motion.
Well, thank you. So could we, I believe this is a recorded?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's open the rolls.
Ayes 15, no zero.
All right, children across America and in the Commonwealth of Virginia are safe from. We did. Thank goodness. All right. Speaking of that, Senator Newman, could I get a motion to strike my Senate Bill 32 that dealt with overweight vehicles, and it is no longer necessary, and I would appreciate a motion to strike.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to strike Senate Bill 32. Clerk, could you open the rolls?
Ayes 15, no zero.
We are off to a great start. And let's see. Next on the bill on the docket here, I believe we have Senator Stewart. Bicycles and certain other vehicles riding two abreast. Senate Bill 362. Senator Stewart, the floor
Thank
is
you,
yours.
Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 362, as you all recall, we changed the law last year to allow bicycles to ride two abreast in the travel lane, and I know it may have even been the chairman of this committee that presented great evidence that that was a much safer way to do things, and it was the right course. Some of us had concerns about that, and unfortunately, some of those concerns came true. I have a constituent in Prince William County who emailed me at the end of August this past year, and I'll paraphrase his story, but it was pretty serious. He was on his way to work 5:30 in the morning while it was still dark, and I don't know if you're familiar with the western side. I know Senator McPike is, western side of Prince William County, but you've still got a lot of old windy roads back through there. So he's coming along in a 3500 dually, and that is just a larger normal size pickup truck, but it has dual wheels on the rear, and he's got a 6-horse trailer, and he's got 1 horse in it. As he comes around a turn, and he said he was doing 50, which was the speed limit. As he comes around the turn, there are two cyclists riding two abreast going 5 miles an hour, and so he had an option to kill them or put the truck off the road, which ended up causing the horse to break its leg, which ended up having to force them to put the horse down. So a pretty serious issue for this constituent. You know, I don't know if you say this or not. Thank goodness it was only the horse and not those two riders. But these are the concerns that some of us had with this. And so what I've tried to do is strike a compromise with this bill, and I don't know if you all will feel that way or not, but it still allows folks to drive two abreast, but it directs them to let the faster vehicle approaching from the rear around as soon as practicable. And I hope that that is a fair way to strike this, but the just certain roads, we don't have bike lanes in rural Virginia. You don't have bike lanes western Prince William, Fauquier, and other areas. And if folks believe they have this ability to do this, they're going to get killed. And fortunately, nobody got killed here. But the horse had to be put down as a result of the guy saving two people's lives.
Senator Stewart, a quick question for you. Would this have been the same circumstance had it been a solo rider in the right-hand lane that the driver had to do the same thing? Was that incident directly related to two cyclists being there, or could it just have been one?
If it had been one, that guy could have hugged the shoulder and he could have threaded the needle, so to speak, between the other car and the cyclist. But with two, he had no option. In order to save those two cyclists' lives, he had no option but to take the ditch and take it off the road.
Yeah, I'm thinking that perhaps coming around the curve, the bicyclist might have been unaware of the vehicle coming up from behind. It seems that was part of the problem here, is the curve, but it's a serious situation. I understand, and so the essence of your bill is that would require them to get into a single file. I guess my only question is, would they have time?
These cyclists follow this, and the minute we passed that law, they knew they could ride two abreast, and so they started doing it. And, Mr. Chairman, it's just, look, I love it. I think it's wonderful if they can cycle, but they've got to understand a car's bigger and is going to win every time. And if we tell them they can ride two abreast at 5 or 10 miles an hour, where vehicles are going 50 miles an hour, somebody's going to get killed. And this is a perfect example of it. And so this is just saying, move over and let them by. That's all it's saying, move over and let them by. And they can still ride two abreast. It's the fairest way I can think to strike some kind of balance in this to avoid these people on bicycles getting killed.
Thank you, Senator Stewart. Questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Newman.
Senator Stewart, why do we need the second part of the bill, I guess, which is the roadway divided? I get they're different roads, but if it's rural and no one's coming, why do you need this second portion? Because if you still have the first portion, then they'll still be required to go into single file when someone is coming up from behind, right?
I agree, Senator Newman.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we strike on line 33 after vehicle, insert period, and delete the rest of the sentence.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion for an amendment to on line 33, after vehicle, put a period and then strike the rest of that line. That is Senator Newman's motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
I have a motion. A second is just a voice vote on. Do we accept the amendment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, the amendment is before us in the bill. Other questions for Senator Stewart? All right, to have a motion on the bill? Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. Of course. Anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the bill?
For those in the Zoom room who would like to speak in favor, please raise your hand electronically. Mr. Chair, we have one speaker. Wyatt Gordon, you may unmute your microphone and begin your testimony. Brantley Tyndall, you will be next.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for making this virtual testimony possible, especially on a snowy day like today. I'm speaking here on behalf of Virginia Conservation Network. We're in opposition to this bill. We fought very hard last year to make this possible because everything studies show us is that it is far safer to have bicyclists be riding abreast. It also makes it easier for drivers to pass them because with the new law where they have to fully change lanes in order to pass bicyclists, it just makes it the number of bicyclists, it really reduces the length that they are riding by half, because instead of having multiple cyclists in a row, you can have people doubled up and make it easier for people to pass. So although the incident that happened is very unfortunate, we are still in opposition to this bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gordon. We've kind of gone out of order here. Is there anyone to speak in favor of the bill?
Brantley Tyndall, you may unmute your microphone and begin your testimony.
Thank you. I'm here to oppose the bill, so I don't want to go in the wrong order, but I'm happy to do what you like.
Is anyone else, no one else in the audience wishes to testify in favor? Go ahead, Mr. Tyndall. You appear to be the only other virtual witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am president of Virginia Bicycling Federation, and as Wyatt said, we worked very hard with members of this committee and the General Assembly last year to pass the Bicyclist Safety Act. This was a part of a three-part bill that was modeled after legislation in Delaware that showed when various elements were added together, reduced bicycling injuries at intersections by 23% and bicyclist injuries overall by 11% over a 5-year study period. So we haven't seen even 1 year of that in Virginia yet. And I appreciate the anecdote that the patron shared about a rural windy road crash. I've been in that bicyclist situation a number of times. And while doing everything legally, even if riding solo, as you said, Mr. Chairman, sometimes you can't hug the corner. The law provides for a lot of reasons why you don't need to be within inches of the edge of the roadway. I actually just shared a constituent email with Commonwealth Transportation Board in the Fredericksburg district from King and Queen County about newly installed rumble strips, which prevent you from riding within at least a foot, if not more, from the edge of the roadway. And those are to prevent roadway departures by drivers, which unfortunately is one of the biggest contributors to traffic fatalities in Virginia, drivers unable to stay on the road. When riding in a group, bicyclists are much more visible when coming around that corner. And in that case, that it's the driver's responsibility that they are in control of their vehicle, able to come to a stop. And if you're carrying a load, you're carrying weight, you should probably drive lower than the maximum speed limit, because remember, the speed limit is a maximum limit. What I think is important to consider is that bicyclists are easier to pass. Typically, when they're in a tighter group, when they're riding two abreast, they are half as long, and they help to control unnecessary passing or dangerously passing from motorists in the case of, and I quote, threading the needle. That the law was changed last year literally to prevent that, because that is an extremely dangerous situation where all 3 or 4 of the individuals, whether they're drivers or bicyclists in this case, could have all been in a crash and all been killed. So I really hate to hear the tragedy of this crash. It's, of course, just one, and I've seen no DMV data to support that this has led to increased crashes in the past 6 months or so since the law took effect. I don't think there's any need for this. I think in this particular case, the driver should have been driving much more slowly and in more control of their vehicle. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. I believe there's no one else in the queue. Any other questions from the committee? Senator Favola.
Mr. Chairman, this may be for the patron or perhaps staff. When you say single file formation, there's an expectation that there'd be a bicycle lane, right, on the road?
That's the problem. If there's a bicycle lane, we wouldn't have this issue because they ride in the lane, I think.
This would really be for roads where there are no bicycle lanes.
And that's the need for it because, I mean, they're tying up traffic and people don't always see them. And Mr. Chairman, to address that, this is exactly what concerns me. The gentleman that testified last and his mindset. His mindset is, I'm a bicycler on the road and the cars need to be more careful. He doesn't quite understand that he's on a bicycle and a guy in a truck or a woman in a truck may not see him. And if they don't, the kid's going to be a grease spot on the road. And by allowing them to do this, we're sanctioning it. I don't know. I guess I'm much more careful. When I was a kid and rode on the road, and I did all the time in country, if I saw a car coming, I got out of the way because I knew who would win.
Yeah. Senator Stewart, I believe that the policy decision was made last year, and this is a tweak to that.
It's a tweak. Yes, sir.
Asking them to get over. We have someone else, Senator Cosgrove.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And Senator Stewart, you bring up a good point. I'm glad that we made the amendment offered by Senator Newman. But this is not a terrible ask to just, if you're riding two abreast, get back in a single file if a car's coming. Now, a standard road lane in Virginia is 11 feet wide. And if you take two bicycles, you're taking up, with shoulder width and pedals and everything else, 3 to 4 feet of that. And that's if they're riding closely together. So I don't think it's a real stretch to just ask that the cyclists who are doing a much lower rate of speed to just move over into single file when traffic is trying to pass. So I think it's a reasonable request, and I hope that the committee will agree.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Servo.
Thank you. Speaking to the bill, so I'm not sure if D-Stuff's here. I can't see down there, but no, he's not. So I'm probably the only avid cyclist up here besides him. He's not here. I rode a bike across the United States, 4,200 miles across the United States, another 1,000 miles training that summer. I've been on plenty of rural roads with cyclists. Rode across the country that summer, both single file and double abreast when we could. Almost got killed by an 18-wheeler that was angry that we were on the road. I've had things thrown at me. I've had people yell at me, honk at me, try and scare me to get me to fall off my bike because drivers don't have the proper modicum of respect for people riding a bike and the position that puts them in. And we adopted a whole series of bills over the last few years to try to make drivers more aware and more respectful of cyclists and the positions they're in, including passing the vulnerable user law that we passed last year, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, that makes it easier to prosecute drivers who seriously injure people. And one of the reasons that riding two abreast, we passed that law, is that it makes cyclists more visible. Because one of the things you always hear when cyclists are injured or killed is, I never saw them, or pedestrians for that matter, never saw them. And when they ride two abreast, you can actually see them. And that causes cars to slow down, to stop and think, and pass when it's safe to pass. And as we talked about last session, existing law, we didn't change it last year. The existing law, I don't know how long it's been on the books, says that a vehicle can cross a double yellow line to pass cyclists when it's safe. And we debated that. Came up on the floor, came up in this committee. And so, that was the point, and that's why it's safer. And I can cite the body to numerous articles in cycling magazines, other publications, about why riding two abreast is the safer way to go, which is why it was part of the Bicycle Safety Act last year. And so, the point is to slow everybody down and make it so everybody gets around safe. And I can appreciate the anecdote, and I would support this bill if we had actual data more than an anecdote to support what you're trying to do. I mean, we just changed the law. It's only been in effect now for 6.5 months. And if we're constantly changing the law back and forth, and then nobody knows what the rules are, and there's even more confusion out there. And so, from my perspective, I think we need to give this a little more time to play out, see what the DMV data results say about how many, situations occurred involving cyclists or whatever in rural roads, because I don't think this happens so often, and I really think we ought to give it some time to play out before we go backwards from what we just adopted last session. So, give it another year or two. I think we, have the conversation if there's a lot of situations, but that's where I come out on it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Serville. Any other questions from the committee? Senator Stewart, the only thing I'll add to it, is that I think riding on rural roads is not a good idea at all, whether it's double, triple, single. Drivers are I don't think they're required to have mirrors on their bike. They'll be unaware of cars coming up behind them. The law we have in place right now is probably the best of a bad situation to do, as Senator Serville pointed out. It's just a bad idea to be on those kinds of roads. I understand it is their right, and we've improved the law as much as we can. But with that, the committee operates on a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would simply point out that for those of us who live in rural Virginia, some people have no choice. If they want to ride a bike, they got to ride it on a rural road. So I know that in Northern Virginia, it's different. But in Rova, rest of Virginia, we've got to deal with this. And I would suggest that waiting for the body count to mount is not a very attractive approach in my book.
Yeah. I know it's also a similar situation with horse-drawn vehicles in your district that create some of these dangerous situations.
Chairman, the issue is really this, and that's
Senator Stewart.
I'm not trying to infringe on their rights that Senator Serville espoused. The issue is that the General Assembly gave them the right of way. And the cyclists know what the law is because it's not a lot of them, and they fought for these changes, and they read the code, and we've actually given them the right of way over an 18-wheeler or over a big truck with a horse trailer. And I'm not sure that all those people who are driving 18-wheelers and trucks with horse trailers know that they have the right of way. So they're not expecting to come around a turn and see two bicycles blocking up the road going 5 or 10 miles an hour. We were just lucky in this situation that those two people didn't die. But the horse had to die instead of them. And this is just a modest thing to say, get over. When you see them coming up behind you, we're not taking away their ability to ride two abreast.
Yeah. And farm vehicles are a little more obvious, and but they too present their own hazards at times. At any rate, we operate on a motion. Do we have a motion on Senate Bill 116? We have a motion to report. We have a second. Have a motion to report and a second. Clerk, would you open the rolls? All in favor, vote aye. Opposed, nay.
Ayes 11. Noes 4.
Ayes 11, noes 4. The bill passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the
Stewart.
committee.
All right. Next up, I believe on my list here, I have Senator Barker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I have Senate Bill 342 here.
Senate Bill 342.
Yeah. This bill deals with the allocation of funds for a program we put in place a couple of years ago called TRIP, which is the Transit Ridership Incentive Program. And what it's designed to do is to provide monies that are available to the urbanized areas of the Commonwealth, where we're trying to promote transit use to be able to reduce traffic congestion and those types of things, and provide opportunities for people to get around without a car if necessary. There were a couple of different categories of funds that were established in this program when we set it up a couple of years ago. And what you can see if you look on lines 27 and 28, that when the legislation was put in place, it said the board should use an amount not to exceed 25% of the funds available to support the establishment of programs that would reduce the impact of fares on low-income individuals, including reduced fare and elimination of fares in some areas. That was done to sort of provide a little bit there, but to not have that be necessarily the dominant approach that would be used in trying to help people be able to get around. What has happened as a result of the pandemic, however, is that transit utilization, particularly on buses and things like that, has dramatically decreased, and we've had transit agencies around the Commonwealth have used federal funds and other types of things that have been available during the pandemic to help maintain their services. But what they've also done is the one thing they have done is the category of funds that is now capped at 25% of the total, to move towards eliminating fares in many instances. And there clearly are a lot of transit agencies around the country, around this Commonwealth that have done that, including right here in Richmond, with the bus service that is available right near here. What this does is, and so we're not really utilizing all the funds, and what this does is, in effect, change the amount, the proportion that would go to those reduced fare or no fare routes. That would be at least 25% and without a cap placed on it. Is advocated for by the transit agencies around the Commonwealth, and I think would help in a lot of ways. There's actually been we've actually increased ridership, although it's still not back to where it was prior to the pandemic getting started because people are afraid of being infected. But we have increased ridership in a number of systems with these types of programs. And what this is doing is trying to set it up so that we get the major benefit from increasing utilization of transit in a lot of our urban areas around the Commonwealth. And that is what the bill is and sort of the current situation and what the intent of this bill is.
Thank you, Senator Barker. I assume the part down on line 31 dealing with the rolling average, the rolling average would always be 25. So this is just a way of saying that 25, the amount of money each year might be different, but the percentage is always the same, correct? And
well, actually, I mean, what it does is the percentage is not always the same. So that what it is that they will respond to where they are now. And there's the rolling average is sort of a rolling average in terms of the utilization of the different systems around the Commonwealth there.
I see.
Mr. Chair.
Questions from the committee?
Thank
Senator
you,
Boysko.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Barker, could you just clarify, this does not use any of the locally allocated money towards things like the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority or those other that we're receiving it?
No,
okay.
It would not have changed, the amount of funds that are available for this program. So it would not impact any of those monies that are there. So for other services and for various programs, both transit and non-transit type of things, highways.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions from the committee? Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of the bill?
Those on Zoom in favor, please raise your hand. Mr. Chair, we have several speakers.
Oh, okay. I will give each speaker 1 minute. So please be brief, and we'll start with Wyatt Gordon.
Hello, Senators. Wyatt again. I think I'm up first. Don't want to cut anyone. But on behalf of Virginia Conservation Network, we are strongly in favor of this bill. It's a common sense measure that allows the Transit Rider Incentive Program to respond to what agencies need most, Right now, that is getting ridership back, and that is providing financial relief to those riders that we all consider essential and we depend upon every day to keep our society functioning. This helps them to get to work. This helps them to be able to afford all of their other costs in a more manageable approach, and that is why we are in favor of this bill. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next on the list, Tanisha Griffin, could you unmute and give your testimony? Please keep it to 1 minute.
Good evening. This is Tanisha Griffin. Hope you can hear me. I'm the environmental policy analyst at New Virginia Majority. We support this measure as well. For some of our working class communities we work with, specifically in Central and Northern Virginia, access to affordable public transit is vital for maintaining employment, education, reaching essential businesses, receiving routine and emergency health and public services. And that's particularly so with the COVID-19 pandemic and everything. So again, we strongly support this bill and its opportunity to provide more funding and opportunity for the low income projects related to zero fare. So thank you, Senator Barker, and we hope the committee will support the measure.
Thank you so much, Tanisha. Next, Danny Plogger, could you unmute and give your testimony? Keep it to 1 minute.
Absolutely. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Danny Plugger. I'm Deputy Director of the Virginia Transit Agency. We strongly support SB 342, and thank you to Senator Barker for introducing it. One thing of note, during the first round of TRIP funding, the Commonwealth of Virginia received 10 applications for low-income fare projects and only received 3 applications for regional routes. And that left a large unallocated balance in the regional pot. And the Commonwealth Transportation Board had to utilize priority transportation funds to make up the difference because there wasn't this flexibility in the program. And so all this legislation does is remove the ceiling and add a floor and create a little bit more flexibility in the future for the TRIP program to benefit Virginians across the board. And so thank you again, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee and Senator Barker for introducing it. We are strongly in support of this bill.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Plogger. Next, Trip Pollard, could you unmute and give your testimony? Please keep it to 1 minute.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Senator Barker did an excellent job explaining this. My name is Trip Pollard with the Southern Environmental Law Center. And the Center did an excellent job of explaining the bill, why it's important, and other speakers have added some additional reasons. It's good for the economy, good for the environment, good for equity, and we urge you to pass the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pollard. Next, we have Julie Tim. Could you please unmute, Julie, and keep your testimony to 1 minute?
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Julie Tim. I am the CEO of Greater Richmond Transit Company. We did implement the zero fare program during the COVID period and found that our ridership of our local bus, which is comprised predominantly of essential workforce, has returned not only to normal levels, but actually has exceeded normal levels by 7 to 10% monthly. It has been incredibly successful for the essential workforce, for people who have limited or fixed incomes, and for our elders, our essential workers, our disabled veterans, and community members with elevated accessibility needs to be able to access not only jobs, but healthcare and food that otherwise is limited when fares become a barrier to mobility. As such, I strongly support this program, that it would provide opportunities across the Commonwealth for other counties, cities, and town to also review their fares and assess what mechanisms and models would be appropriate for them to benefit their communities and economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you for your presentation at the joint Senate and House subcommittee meeting in Arlington this year. It was really great, and we really appreciate your being there. Next, we have Faith Harris. Faith, if you could unmute and present your testimony, keep it to 1 minute.
Good afternoon, Senators, and thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm Faith Harris, co-director for Virginia Interfaith Power and Light, and we've already heard really great testimony for why this bill should pass, and we wanted just to weigh in and say that we strongly support this bill.
Okay, thank you so much. Is there anyone in the audience in opposition to the bill? Anyone in the virtual audience who are in opposition to the bill? Please raise your hand. Seeing none, Senator Barker, last word? You're in good shape?
I'm not going to say anything further.
All right, there we go.
Move to report.
Yep, second.
We have a motion to report and a second. Clerk, if you would open the rolls. All in favor, vote aye. Opposed, no. All right.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Ayes 15, no zero. The bill reports. Thank you, Senator Barker. Senator Vogel, I believe you're up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have Senate Bill 320, and this bill deals with mini trucks. I don't know how many of you on the committee are familiar with what mini trucks are. I'm sure you've seen them before. They're just small-sized trucks. You may see them on the campus of a school. You often see them on the campus of a plant. They're used to haul all kinds of equipment around. There is a under federal law currently, if they are 21 years or older, they are exempt from EPA restrictions. And if they're 25 years or older, they are exempt from the Department of Transportation restrictions. If they're not, which is to say the newly manufactured versions, then they're not exempt, and that creates issues for them on our federal highways. You can imagine that for lots of reasons, there are concerns about having them on highways. Well, I'll get to that in a second. Here's the issue. We have people who want to use them. We have 21 states who have worked out solutions to allow them to be used. We have people who wish to import them. We have people who wish to buy them. And 21 states have classified them as an ATV, as an opportunity and a way for people to be able to import them and to purchase them and use them in the way that I've just described. And what I've brought to you is legislation that is doing it in the way that most states have done it. The goal is to create the opportunity for us to have them in Virginia and for us to allow people to use them the way they wish to use them. And in this case, what my legislation would do is, one, it defines what a mini truck is, and it also provides that it can be operated on a highway in the Commonwealth with a speed limit of 55 miles per hour or less. This is what I'm proposing. I think Lisa Wallmeyer should get a gigantic, I don't know what I can give her in terms of helping me on a constituent service matter that's not even my constituent, but it's a compelling issue, and this is one solution. If you have a better solution, I am all for it. But this is what I propose, and I think probably a better way for you to hear about this is 1 minute from the person who has been working on this for a long time, and then you may want to hear from others. I know not everybody's in agreement, but this is my proposal.
Okay. Do you have a witness that you would like to?
I do have somebody who's on Zoom.
Oh, okay. If that's okay, if we can hear from the witness on Zoom, and then we'll take committee questions.
This is Gary Duncan with Duncan Imports in Christiansburg, Virginia. Our family's been in the automobile business for 67 years. I've been a dealer since I was 19 years old. Back 6 years ago, we started importing vehicles from Japan. We brought in about 600 mini trucks. We sell them to wineries, schools, a lot of farmers, airports use them. And we were able to title them in Virginia up until last July. We probably titled close to 2,000 of these vehicles in Virginia when the state took it away from us. So all we're asking for is to bring it back and let us be able to title these vehicles in Virginia like we had before.
And these vehicles, they do. I mean, it's not like a ATV. They've got doors, they've got two headlights, two wipers, turn signals, two mirrors, tail lights, backup lights, tag lights. They have all the features of a vehicle on the highway. And once again, they're enclosed. They're safer than a motorcycle or a three-wheeler that shares the same road with them. Very useful on farms. I've got one on mine, and this gives you the opportunity to be able to go into town to get what you need, to go back out to be able to run on a rural road and not the interstates, but on a 55 mile an hour highway, which these trucks will exceed 55 miles an hour.
Does your bill, Senator Vogel, preclude these vehicles from being on an interstate highway?
Yeah, yes, because interstates are 65. And the reason that we picked 55 is because they can go safely above 55. And we pegged it at 55 for that very reason, because we don't think they're interstate worthy, but we think that they should be able to go on a road. And just for what he said, because I think about where I live, and I think about the trucks that go down my road that say farm use, that are literally falling apart. But if somebody wanted to instead use one of these, like the Nissan truck, and they wanted to use that, I feel like I'd feel very comfortable with that very modern truck being driven and titled in Virginia and driven down the highway from Farm 1 to Farm 2.
And these vehicles could pass a state safety inspection if they were properly maintained.
Yeah, well, I mean, they would be, yeah. I mean,
okay.
They're roadworthy. I'd let somebody else would speak to that.
Could we perhaps, before we take questions, hear from VDOT or DMV on this issue? Joanne Maxwell?
And just to be clear, when we're talking about what this does, we're not trying to make them a vehicle like a regular vehicle. We're talking about a different definition. Other states, we're doing what 21 other states have done, and they're like an ATV, even though they're not really an ATV. They're really a mini truck. So just to clarify that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, Joanne Maxwell from VDOT. We do have issues. Obviously, we don't have a position on this bill, but we do have noted some issues and some questions. I think one of the first things we question is the ability of the speed capabilities of these vehicles. We don't know what their speed capabilities are. We did a study recently over the last year involving golf carts and the use of golf carts on highways. And what we learned from that study is that when there's a significant difference or not so significant difference between the speeds at which vehicles are capable of traveling and the speed limits on the roads on which they're traveling, that just creates enormous or more significant safety issues as the difference in the speeds between the vehicles increases the risks of injury and crashes, et cetera, it increases exponentially. We don't know, based on the legislation at least, it does not articulate what the speed capability of these vehicles are, so we don't have a level of comfort with that. The other issue is that the roads, when this legislation talks about roads 55 miles an hour, there are interstates that have 55 mile an hour speed limits on them. So right now, as the bill is drafted, these vehicles, devices could actually drive on the interstates based on the language of the bill.
And
I don't know if we modified the bill to address that issue, that it would necessarily alleviate our concerns about the difference in speed limits and our lack of understanding as to how fast these vehicles can really travel.
So in other words, if you were traveling along legally on an interstate at 55 miles an hour and suddenly it transitioned to 70 miles an hour or 65 miles an hour, the vehicle might present a hazard because of it's just going slower than traffic around it.
Mr. Chair, yes, except that the way this bill is written, that vehicle could not be on the interstate at that point if the interstate speed had increased to 70 miles. But
how would they exit the interstate if they weren't right by an exit at the time of the transition? Is that legitimate?
I would assume they would know that at some point they're going to need to exit in advance of the speed limit increasing, but
knowing when speed limits are going to change can be a difficult thing for people to foresee or know if they're not using that road all the time. Does DMV have any issues, Linda?
Mr. Chairman, Linda Ford, DMV's acting commissioner. We have some of the same concerns that Joanne just articulated. These many trucks do not meet the federal motor vehicle safety standards, and so by definition don't have some of the basic requirements for crashworthiness on the roads, such as seat belts, bumpers, the tires and brakes don't have to meet the same standards. And so we do, as the Highway Safety Office, we do have concerns about putting these on the roadways.
Okay. Senator Newman.
Were these on the roadways before? I think the gentleman indicated that they were on before until recently. Is that correct or not correct?
That is, my understanding is they are not. They were not. There is provisions in the code that they're going to be, under this bill, they're defined as utility vehicles. And there is a section of the code that talks about golf carts and utility vehicles under certain circumstances being allowed, specifically on roadways that are 25 miles an hour or less, and they can cross over a 35-mile-an-hour road under certain safety conditions that the locality checks out. So this actually supersedes or passes over those safety requirements, and then, of course, allows it up to 55 miles an hour on the road.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Newman.
Jill, is there a medium place for this? I know you went on the interstates, and I think, honestly, kind of picking on that as opposed to suggesting an amendment is just not helpful, right? Because we could easily amend that. So the question is there another place under 45 or something where
That's
these
what
could be helpful?
Lisa and I were discussing. The one solution to this problem, and it's pretty practical, is to change the speed limit, to say it's 45. And just to be clear, this is classifying it as a utility vehicle, but understand that it's a truck. It's a Nissan truck. It's a truck that a school uses, a plant uses, and the issue that we're facing, and why I'm bringing the legislation in the first place, and I don't think I was as clear about this because I didn't know how much this would actually become relevant in the discussion, but it's relevant for you all, is that up until a year ago, these were being titled in Virginia, and this was not an issue. And for a lot of reasons that I don't think we need to go into now, we stopped titling them. And so that's fundamentally the issue. We have to figure out a way to solve this so that the gentleman who you heard from before, who I think is one of the largest, if not the largest importer in the country, and sells a lot of these, and for all the reasons that you've heard us talk about, wineries, schools, everywhere, it's more than a utility vehicle. It's more than a ATV. It's a truck. And so if there is a way to solve this problem, and I know that the DMV and VDOT are sick and tired of, help trying to work through this with me, and I really, really appreciate the work that they've done. But I'm just trying to figure out a solution to a really simple and practical problem, and that is, a business owner who's trying to accommodate people who wish to purchase these trucks and would like to have them titled in Virginia. And so when I started this conversation, I'm open to any solution that will solve it. Because I've been trying for some period of time, and I don't think there's any solution other than a legislative solution, because we tried to work it out with DMV to try to figure out a different way to do it. But until we can figure out a way to do it via legislation and say, here it is, here's a definition of it, and it can ride on a road that's 45 or something like that, I don't know a better way to solve it so that they can be titled.
Thank you, Senator Vogel. State Police, could you weigh in? Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman, Major Ron Maxey, Virginia State Police. The patron, I appreciate you letting me speak. Stop by your office. You were unavailable at the time earlier today. I'm well aware now, seeing Mr. Duncan was here. I've been talking to Mr. Duncan probably for the past 6 years on this issue, trying to work through. These vehicles are brought in through U.S. Customs. They sign an HS-7 form that clearly states they are not for on-road purposes. They do not meet federal motor vehicle safety standards. As such, they're not eligible for a Virginia state inspection, so they will not even be able to be submitted for an inspection. If it's a titling issue, I'll leave that up to DMV to speak to. We have no opposition to these being sold as an ATV for farm use or on a campus or something. Our issue comes into play when they're driven on a public highway or street. There's conflicts within this under current law, 46.2, 916.3, as well as 916.2, clearly defines where a golf cart or a utility vehicle can be operated, and they are saying speed limits 25 miles per hour or less, and as you're all aware, there's many jurisdictions that have to adopt that you can drive them within their jurisdiction. This bill goes beyond the titling and actually opens it up to where it can drive on a highway up to 55 miles per hour. These vehicles are small, mini trucks. You can find them on YouTube, readily available. You've probably seen them in many movies that are filmed over in Japan. They're commonly seen on the streets over in foreign countries. They're brought in at a very cheap price. Again, when they're off the road, perfectly fine. They get on the road. They're not designed for safety. Many of the YouTube videos will even tell people walking through, be careful. They're very rusted out. Many coming from Japan, very salt water environment out there. A lot of rust. You're not going to be able to inspect them. They can go up to 70 miles per hour. So they're very fast vehicles. Again, no safety features, which is a concern for the operator of that vehicle, as well as anyone who maybe is involved in a crash. We all remember the old stories of the Pintos and all, I believe it was, that people would rear end them and they would catch fire because they didn't meet the safety standards. So we are concerned putting a vehicle that doesn't meet federal standards on the road. And again, when they're imported, I can appreciate where we're at here as far as titling, but it is well known when they come in that they're signing a form, an HS7 form, stating they know these are not for on-road purposes.
But they could be used for, if you hung a farm use sign on them, you could.
Off-road, correct.
Yeah.
An ATV would be okay. This is defined, a utility vehicle is a motor vehicle, and as a motor vehicle, it's required to comply with annual inspection requirements. And again, even if they get the title, then you're into the same situation that the purchaser would have a vehicle that maybe the dealer's been able to pass along, but then the purchaser is stuck not being able to operate it on the road because they believe that they can when they can't.
Any questions for VDOT, DMV, or the state police from the committee?
Mr. Chair.
Senator Boysko.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you clarify, so if we were to approve, you're saying that even if we approved it like a 35 mile per hour road, that still wouldn't be acceptable to you all because they're not safe for any road use? Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, ma'am. They're defined in code. They're not defined as a vehicle. They're defined as a motor vehicle, different than a golf cart, but a motor vehicle. And then if you look at 1157, the definition for vehicles requiring inspection, it says any motor vehicle. So they would have to pass an inspection. And first and foremost, you have to meet the federal motor vehicle safety standards, and that is not a high bar. That's the bare minimum safety standards a vehicle can have. And these, when they're brought in and imported, they're signing an affidavit knowing they don't meet those standards.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Favola.
I am sympathetic to where the patron is trying to go with the bill, but I'm wondering, would you entertain an amendment that would limit this to, you can still have your Nissans or your trucks, but they'd have to meet, at a minimum, the federal safety standards?
I don't. They don't
I'll
meet
just
those.
be honest. In European countries, you see them everywhere on the roads. In this country, we have,
Yeah.
we have a trucking industry that's different, and our trucking industry and the way we, how we manage safety standards in the United States is different. And so we don't have the ability through legislation here or through this conversation to elevate the Nissan or the Mitsubishi or any of those vehicles to a place where we can say you're going to meet federal safety standards. That won't work, unfortunately.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, let me follow up. Maybe I didn't really
Senator Favola.
You're allowing them to, well, I don't know if we're allowing a different use. We don't dictate the use of the vehicles, but in effect, they're substituting for other vehicles. So does that different use open a door, a safety door, maybe with the?
So here's the issue. This has been an issue in every state, and every state has attempted to solve it in a different way. I brought it to you in the way that most states have tried. 21 states have done it this way, putting it into the code under the utility section. Maybe Lisa can speak to that more articulately than I can. But this is how we designed it that way, thinking that this was more likely a solution that would be palatable to the committee. There are other ways that they've done it. But we tried to go with the more conventional approach, which was put it in the utility vehicle section, define it this way. I understand what the state police are saying about it being characterized as a vehicle, and maybe that's an issue that we need to address. I know I just spoke to Senator Newman. He suggested maybe we have it go by a week and have that discussion.
Okay, and I do want to hear from Major Maxey again, who just to address that.
Mr. Chairman, Ron Max, Virginia State Police. And to Senator Favola's question, USDOT, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, I have been in conversations with them throughout the years regarding these vehicles that Mr. Duncan has. There is a process on the HS7, the federal form, when they bring it into compliance and they can certify it. My contacts that I've talked to at USDOT said that has not been achieved or granted by USDOT. So they are, if they elevate the safety features on these vehicles to come into compliance, there is a process for that.
Yeah.
These vehicles just haven't.
If I could, and if I could, Senator Favola, could I hear? I believe Mr. Duncan wanted to interject a comment online, or excuse me, virtually. Could you unmute, sir? And
Yeah, I would just, they were saying that these were brought in as off-road. They're not. They're brought in under number one on the HS7. It declares that they're 25 years old, which says they don't have to meet the Federal Motor Carriers safety standards because of the age. I mean, that's the way the HS7 states on it. It's not that they're brought in for off-road. It's brought in that they were manufactured and they're 25 years old and they don't have to meet it. The federal government says that they're legal to be in the United States on the highways. The EPA says that they're legal to be on the highways. It's the state rules about light lenses having DOT on them. The seatbelt certifications, not that they have the safety equipment, it just doesn't have the DOT numbers that they're looking for on them. That is the question. The lights do the right job. They're the right colors. They're the same thing as on the American vehicles. They're just made in Europe. Then the other thing is we're talking about the speed limit on these and the safety of it. Right after we've been talking about bicycles on the road, these run traffic speed rather than slower than the traffic. So to me, that they're a vehicle that does the work that needs to be done.
yeah, I understand that we keep American cars that are older than 25 years exempt because they're already here and they're already in use. The idea of bringing in vehicles that are over 25 years old to be able to use them because they circumnavigate those standards doesn't, I don't think, make a tremendous amount of sense. But at this point, thank you, sir. And Senator Spruill, you had a question.
Mr. Chairman, I'm hoping Senator Ebola was suggesting postpone another week.
That is what I was going to suggest.
No, wait a minute, cool. Be cool. That ain't what I was going to say.
Okay.
I'm trying to talk slow. Be cool. But the gentleman from the State Department was saying until they meet the requirements, they don't meet the requirements. They can't go on the highway. So why are we wasting time until these vehicles start meeting the state requirements for our state? So unless you want to make my friend feel good by postponing another week until the gentleman from the state, I forgot what his name, until he get up and say, hey, they meet the requirements for the state. They meet the requirements for the way we do our vehicles in our country. Till you tell them that, I don't know why Bob wanted to postpone the whole week to waste of time. It doesn't meet our requirements, so why are we wasting time?
Well, the only thing I would say, Senator Spruill, is that some other states have cracked the code on this thing. I don't know whether we can do that here in Virginia, but I would offer the patron the courtesy of bringing it back, if I could exercise committee chairman discretion here to, if you feel that there's an opportunity to come up with a solution here. From my point of view, it doesn't look like a strong case, but...
Mr. Chair, I would just say I appreciate Senator Spruill's remarks, and I think if we were trying to make this a truck that we were going to put on the highways and treat like a truck, then I would say 100% he's right. That until Nissan produces these trucks, not to European standards, but to U.S. standards, then yes. But what we're asking for is something different, something characterized more like an ATV, more to be used in that regard. Then I would respectfully ask that the committee work with us so that these we could perhaps solve this problem.
Okay.
And I think Mr. Duncan and I could probably have a conversation, and we could work maybe with Lisa and come to a conclusion that might reach peace in the valley that would make everybody on the committee happy, and perhaps DMV and VDOT, and for certain the state police. We're not looking to create any safety issue, for sure. And certainly, in my view, if you are allowing something to come in and exempt them from the standard because they're older than 25 years old, then I would actually prefer that we bring a brand new Nissan truck in and let someone use the brand new safe Nissan truck that is, a mini version of a larger truck. That, yes, while it doesn't meet USDOT standards, I feel very comfortable that someone can use that on their farm or on their college campus. And I would like to create an opportunity for them to bring it in and have it be titled.
So without objection, no, I was just going to say if there's no objection, we'll give you a week, come back next week, and see if you can reconfigure this in such a way that might meet the committee's.
Thank you. Thank you, and I really appreciate the committee's time. Senator Sugarline, I'm very sorry.
Senator Vogel.
Thank you, especially thank you, Lisa Wallmeyer.
And thank you. And Senator Bell, thank you for your patience. Senator Serval has one of his two bills he needs to, he has a witness issue here, and appreciate your patience. Senator Serval, what is your bill number?
Mr. Chairman, I believe it is 246.
Senate Bill 246.
I appreciate Senator Bell's indulgence. Senator Vogel promised me her bill was going to be quick.
I lied. I had no idea. I did not have it yet.
246. Senator Serval, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 246 amends a statute, excuse me, 46.2104, which requires a motorist to produce an identification card, a driver's license, and a registration card upon request by a law enforcement officer. And basically what the statute does is it just says that the duty of the driver to produce that license and registration doesn't arise until the police officer tells them why they stopped them. And the reason that's important is because just tell you all, I had a constituent who had a situation with a state trooper where she wasn't advised why she was stopped, and she asked, and he wouldn't say, and it really escalated. And I think if they just had some dialogue, it would have resolved. And it got me thinking about, and it was not my case, but I got to thinking about it, and I've seen this situation arise in other cases that I've had where I think a little disclosure to somebody why their vehicle was pulled over would, I think, go a long way towards lowering tensions in the interaction, especially what we've seen over the last couple of years. When I engaged with the state police about it, they told me that's actually what they trained to, is to advise people why they were stopped within a reasonable time after they're stopped before they ask for license and registration. And I just think it's the better practice. And the way it's put in here, this is actually a traffic infraction, a $250 fine. So that would just be another element the government have to prove before they could convict somebody of not producing their license and registration upon request. I think it's a pretty simple solution that will help, I think, lower tensions and interactions. That's what the bill does, and I have one witness who would like to provide a little bit of testimony.
You have a virtual witness?
Yes.
Yes.
His name
Please.
is Patrick Blanche.
Patrick Lynch?
Blanche.
Blanche, excuse me. Mr. Blanche, could you unmute yourself and offer your testimony?
Hello, are you able to see and hear me?
Yes, sir, we can. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you all for allowing me to address the committee and also for your service to the Commonwealth. The case that Senator Serval referenced actually was my case. It occurred in Fairfax County. And before I get into the circumstances of that, I wanted to talk to you, I guess, quickly about what this bill does and doesn't do. The thing that it does is it entitles a motorist to know why they were stopped before they have to comply with police requests for identification. But it doesn't create a mandate for the police to provide that information. It just prevents the police from charging a motorist with an offense for failing to provide that license and registration. So it hopefully will create the best practice that Senator Serval talked about, but it doesn't create a legal requirement for the police to do that. It just prevents them from charging and convicting somebody who says, I'm not going to give you my license until you tell me why you stopped me. I think this is an important thing from from both the direction of law enforcement and from the perspective of motorists. The reason why this is important for law enforcement is that law enforcement want to feel comfortable in the situation they're in during a traffic stop, and they want a person who is stopped to be compliant and cooperative. And what I have seen, I've watched hundreds of body camera and dash camera videos over my career. I'm a defense attorney in Fairfax County, and I've represented thousands of people. And as Senator Serval pointed out, it is a very common scenario for a motorist to be stopped and to not be aware of why they were stopped, and then to ask the police officer, why am I stopped? And sometimes the police officer doesn't say, or says, well, why do you think I stopped you? Because they're trying to fish for evidence of whatever they suspect is going on. And that creates a situation that can escalate very easily into a person who's then being ordered out of a car on the side of the road, doesn't feel safe for whatever reason. And this is a very simple method for the police to obtain the kind of cooperation that they want by providing a very basic amount of information to a motorist. And from the motorist's point of view, you know, we all, I think, feel entitled to travel from place to place without being stopped arbitrarily. And when a person is pulled over without being told why they're being stopped, they may have the feeling of being stopped arbitrarily. And as a consequence, they may not feel like being cooperative with the police officer. So this is really a key thing that we can do that's very simple to de-escalate the interactions that occur between motorists and law enforcement officers. The case that Senator Serval referenced was my client, Wanisha Brooks, and she was stopped at, I think, 3 in the morning in a sort of secluded area off of Interstate 395 in Fairfax County. 495. And the trooper saw that her taillights were out, but Ms. Brooks had daytime running lights, so she thought her lights were on because she could see her headlights. And the trooper wouldn't, she asked, why did you stop me? And the trooper wouldn't say, and then said, why don't you get out of the car and I'll show you? And that frightened Ms. Brooks because she didn't feel like she was being, she didn't feel like she knew why she was being stopped, and she didn't feel like it was safe to get out of the car in that situation. And the situation really escalated and resulted in her being pulled out of her car in the middle of the night and arrested and brought to jail and charged, in this instance, with offenses that she wasn't guilty of or that there wasn't even evidence of. So, you know, this is, again, a very simple fix to a problem that would avoid, I think, a lot of problematic interactions between citizens and law enforcement. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Questions from the committee before
one
we
other witness.
You have another witness?
Sproul has a question.
Senator Sproul.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Serval, then are you saying that when you stop, the officer pull up, are you saying to have your driver license and stuff ready for him when they pull up?
Not necessarily. What existing law is, what this statute says, is that if you're stopped and a police officer shows you that if they're wearing their uniform or they show you they have a badge, then if the officer asks you, then you're required to produce your license and registration. That's the law today. Only after they ask you. And all this says is that in addition to asking you, they have to tell you the reason why you were stopped. So that's all this adds.
Second question, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sproul.
Then, so you're saying they have to, before, if they don't ask me, then they have to tell you why they stop you?
If they want to get your license and registration, they have to tell you why they stopped you.
Mr. Chairman, second question. We have seen it. We have a lot of time they come up, they don't do that. They just, whatever they're going to do, they just ask you for your license, what have you, and they don't tell you why they stop them. And then, from a black person concerned, if you question them that, then they're going to say you resisting arrest or what have you. So how can we get around that? I mean, as far as you talk about your officers, as far as why you stopped me, I have nothing wrong. Then that leads from one thing to another.
Mr. Chairman, that's exactly what this bill is seeking to prevent.
Okay.
That's exactly what this is seeking to prevent. So,
all right, thank you.
Okay. Let's.
I have one other person that just want to
yes,
say
please.
They're in support. I don't think they have much more to say than that.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Dan Goldman. I'm with Justice Forward Virginia. We strongly support this bill for precisely the reasons that Senator Spruill just brought up and the other reasons that Senator Serval stated.
Before we get to any more committee questions, is there anyone else in the audience to speak in favor of the bill? Anyone online who would like to speak in favor of the bill, please raise your hand virtually. Okay. Anyone in the audience wish to speak against the bill? Is there anyone virtually in the virtual audience who would like to speak against the bill? Other questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry?
Go ahead and make a motion.
Senator McPike?
I'd make the motion to report the bill. I think it's a good idea to help de-escalate, as I think has been demonstrated today.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
It's actually a good bill.
Okay. Okay. The bill is we've got a motion and a second to report the bill. Clerk, could you open the roll? Senator Suderline?
No, it's
Did you want green?
no.
You're voting no? Abstain. Okay.
Ayes 8, no 6, 1 abstention.
Ayes 8, no 6, 1 abstention. The bill passes. Senator Serval, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a second bill, but it's pretty quick, but I want to let Senator Bell go first.
Please let Senator Bell go. Senator Bell, thank you for your patience. We appreciate it greatly. And,
thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is Senate Bill 334. And as we get started, we do have a minor amendment and ask that the clerk, if she could read that, please. While she's pulling that up, I'll just tell you, this bill allows smaller localities, towns, to have speed cameras if they so choose. Currently, if they don't have their own police department, they can't do that. And I'm going to explain why I'm requesting this at the request of a town in my district. But before that, if you could do the amendment, please.
Mr. Chairman, the amendment is on line 320. After the word infraction, period, insert after payment of agreed vendor compensation as set forth in paragraph 6 of this section and actual program costs incurred by the Department of State Police, comma.
Could you quickly just explain the amendment?
The state police have a minor cost, sheriffs, et cetera, whoever processes, and they asked that this amendment would allow them to recoup that cost, and it was done at the sheriff's request.
Even though the rest of the bulk of the fine would go to the town?
Correct. They still would, there'd be a fee of processing.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment, clerk, is that a voice vote? No. All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the bill as amended is before us.
Okay, as I briefly explained, there's, in the current code, if you're a small town and you don't have your own police force, you can't have these cameras. I was approached by Mayor David Simpson, the town of Hamilton, beautiful town in Loudoun County. Unfortunately, the mayor can't testify. He was actually recently involved in a pretty severe accident. But I do have a letter from the mayor pro tem, Ken Wine, and I think he might actually be online. And I'm just going to read it to you. Frankly, I'm pretty neutral about the cameras. I think they can be very effective, but I see pros and cons. I'm doing this at the request of the town because they have a desperate situation and they need a solution. And it's really putting families and children at risk. And I'll read the letter and you'll kind of understand. It's not very long. Dear Senator Bell, as an elected official for the town of Hamilton, I would like to voice my strong support for SB 334. Hamilton, Virginia has a charming main street that is an offshoot of Virginia Route 7, known as Colonial Highway. The street is where most of us and many of our town residents live. We are an old town known for our Victoria-era homes, small school, annual parade, which I've been in, by the way, community park, and general small-town charm. While acknowledging growth and change, we do like living slow and small. We like living safe. Colonial Highway goes through a small-scale commercial area, past several churches, and through a school zone. It frequently has people crossing at several points by way of 2 crosswalks. Residents of our town are increasingly subjected to put it plainly, is illegal and dangerous behavior by motorists. The speed limit for all Colonial Highway is 25 miles per hour. According to non-ticketing speed monitors, drivers have been clocked in excess of 100 miles per hour, particularly at night. Hamilton relies on Loudoun County Sheriff's Office for law enforcement. While Loudoun County Sheriff's patrolling has increased due to pressure from residents and others, a speed camera would allow enforcement to occur day and night, thus reducing the need for policing, especially needed with an already strapped sheriff's office, and increasing revenues. Above all, a ticketing speed camera would provide a necessary speed deterrent that would help keep our citizens safe. I believe enforcing existing law, providing for community safety, and empowering municipalities should be an easy win for any legislator. I hope we can count on your support. So that's why we're here. We've got this small town, and frankly, if they had the police department or the ability to patrol it, they would try to do that. They don't, and unfortunately, drivers know this. They know it's not patrolled, and they go through it very fast. They can have cameras on the areas where school zones are at, but this obviously, their children have to walk in a small town before they hit that school zone, and that's what this is really about. I hope that we do have some people, somebody online.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Sproul.
Question to the, I'm going to have Jennifer McCullough be my lawyer should something happen. 2 questions. I'm driving speed, and I'm saying, wait a minute. That's my car, but I wasn't driving that car. I got 16 brothers and sisters, for example. I wasn't driving that car. So how do you resolve that problem?
Mr. Chairman, I would answer that. Goes into the idea of cameras, which are speed cameras, which are already legal in Virginia, and there are already mechanisms in place for that situation. But I would say any good court or lawyer, no disrespect to your brothers and sisters, would easily tell you're the best looking of the bunch. So they would know it wasn't you.
Second question, Mr. Chairman. Then
Senator Sproul.
I asked Scott Survey, keep quiet. I asked them, I say, this community, this town, knowing my persuasion, you can look at me real good, and we concerned about sometimes that we are scared of those cameras because a lot of blacks get stopped and they say one thing, we say another thing. We have proven the fact that some officers sometimes, not all, I want to make it clear, not all officers not bad, I want to make sure of that, but some officers have stopped particular black folks in some areas saying this, and when in court we got a good lawyer and we prove it was not so. So I don't know that town, is that a mixed town, is majority white town, or what is it?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I mean, first again, speed cameras are already legal in Virginia.
I understand that.
They are. This
Yes,
is
sir.
just one little town. They don't even have a police department. And because they don't, they rely on the county, which is a distance away and really can't provide a lot of support for them. And because no one's providing that support, people are speeding through it. They're asking for that reason only. They need a deterrent to stop people from speeding. And unfortunately, the word is out that you can go through there and there's nobody patrolling.
Okay. Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess to answer my client's question in part, the point of speed cameras is that the police don't stop you. It catches you if you run the light, and you get the summons in the mail. And to the extent there is an issue around whether it was you or not, I believe, and we have state police here who can answer, or maybe Scott Servell, your other lawyer. I do believe there is a mechanism for you when you go to court to challenge that summons to say this was not me driving. But that's a question for me. I have as well, but that's not really.
And these traffic violations do not go against your record. You don't get points, for them. The only thing. Lisa.
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to follow up to Senator McClellan's question, statement that if you get one of these tickets, you don't even actually go to court. You can file an affidavit by mail that it was not you. And
Okay.
then it's dismissed.
Thank you. Senator Cosgrove.
So that I don't have to pay Jen. I ain't gonna pay you nothing, gentlemen.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I asked the gentleman, why doesn't Hamilton just hire a couple of cops? Problem solved.
Mr. Chairman, I believe they're online, and I'll let them speak about this, but without having the cruisers and the other equipment and the training, it's a pretty expensive thing. Or if you're talking about going to other localities and hiring them, they explored that, but this would give a continuous 24/7, and they would have limited funds to hire anybody for any extended period.
Not if they had a bunch of these cameras, they wouldn't.
Pardon? I mean, I will tell you, I wrote a letter to Loudoun County sheriffs and even the state troopers and asked to have more of a presence in that area, and I think that's kind of what, they have seen some of that, but I don't think this is a problem just in Hamilton. There's many of these small towns, they have very limited funds, and they're strapped on things like this.
Senator Favola, I'm sorry, Senator Cosgrove, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up on that. When Interstate 64 is busy, I take but Route 460 home. I go through all kinds of little towns. Wakefield, Waverly, Windsor, a bunch of W's, Disputana, you name it. They all have a police officer. And believe me, that police officer writes enough tickets to pay his salary and the salary of a couple more. So, and look, the other thing is I am not a videophobe. I actually carried the red light camera bill when it finally got passed. But I think this is just a step a little too far. I really do.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, I'll tell you, that I'm not going to say to this committee that I think this is the absolute best solution. This is the best one that we could come to for this particular town.
Okay.
And I hear your comments, though.
Okay. Senator Favola, you had a question?
Well, a question and a comment. Is it your expectation, and maybe we have to say this as an amendment, that there would be a sign notice that this is red camera monitored? Because that does, in effect, slow people down.
Mr. Chairman, my understanding is in the areas where the cameras are placed, they automatically will have those signs. But yes, to answer your question, yes, that would be there. Okay. And frankly, that we hope. I mean, I've even seen a little off topic where they've had an empty cruiser setting on the road, and that's a deterrent. Yes. Okay. But certainly, I agree. Those signs are a deterrent.
And they would be there.
Mr. Chairman, I do think that the mayor pro tem may be online.
Okay, if we could have the mayor
or a representative from Hamilton.
Okay. Those on Zoom who would like to speak in support, please raise your hand electronically.
The person who did the letter's name is Ken Wine.
Kenneth Wine, you may unmute your microphone and begin your testimony.
Okay. Well, hopefully he's having a temporary problem. Oh, there we go.
I just unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. This is Kenneth Wine, Mayor Pro Tem of Hamilton. Some of the issues that have been brought up as far as bringing a policeman into town and such, or hiring a policeman, we've looked into this, and the cost is too extraordinary for our little town. We only have about 700 residents. The problem with the traffic here in town is we are a very small town, but we are a bypass around the bypass. We have a bypass around our town. Route 7 main dual lane highway goes past our town, but we become the bypass around the bypass on several occasions. And as far as traffic goes, we do have a couple of speed signs in town that notify people of how fast they're going. One happens to sit right directly in front of my house. And I have been out in my yard or sat on my front porch and watched cars go by anywhere from 37 to 45 miles an hour. Some of them even tend to speed up when they see the sign as a joke or whatever. I don't know. But I know that Mayor Simpson in the past has worked to try to get this pushed through so we can have some deterrent for the traffic in town. We just have way too many people coming through town way too fast. They forget they're in town or something to that effect. And we would certainly appreciate passage of this bill.
Thank you, sir. And we have two other commenters. If you could keep it to 1 minute, please. Brantley Tyndall, please unmute and give us your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brantley Tyndall with Virginia Bicycling Federation and also with sports backers for this issue. I just want to give a little bit of statistical context for why speeding is such an important thing to rein in. This year in Virginia, there have been 960 traffic fatalities, or at the end of last year, which is the highest number I've ever seen. It's the highest number on record in the past decade. And between 2019, which had 349 speeding-related fatalities, and last year, which had 444, just shy of 100 more people killed due to speeding. It is increasingly a problem that DMV and other agencies find to be a contributor to fatal traffic crashes, which are, of course, increasing, seemingly to increase every single year. So certainly we are supportive of any tool that can help lower these this growing trend.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Next, we have Mike Doyle. Could you unmute and give your testimony? Please keep it to 1 minute.
I'm sorry. I thought I was going to do Senator Scott Surival. I don't mean to be on this one. Sorry.
Okay.
The next one.
That's fine,
Thank
Mike. Christopher Hornbaker. Christopher Hornbaker, could you unmute and give your testimony? Keep it to 1 minute. You can unmute your line now. Is Mr. Hornbaker there? Okay. Seem to have a technical difficulty here. I do have a question for you. I agree, these can be egregious problems, and some places are worse than others. The concern I have is that this is a town within the county of Loudoun. Loudoun County is responsible for patrolling this town. They probably don't, because I think there's an issue with where the fines go and what have you, but it's their obligation to do that. And I get calls from subdivisions who say, hey, the police just don't, it's speeding here, and the police just don't pay attention to our subdivision. And if safety is the issue here, that subdivision is no different than the town of Hamilton. And that's my concern here, Senator Bell, is that we're using the town status to elevate them above other folks in the community. And am I wrong here, or am I seeing this wrong?
Mr. Chairman, I think you make a good point. I don't want to speak, one way or the other about Loudoun County sheriffs. I will tell you they have a very large geographical area, and over 400,000 people, by far the largest sheriff's department performing law enforcement in the Commonwealth, by far. So they have a big ask, and like every other law enforcement agency in the Commonwealth right now, probably in much of the United States, they're having a really hard time recruiting and retaining officers. So they are strapped, to be honest with you, to cover all these areas and the number of people they have. They have responded to this area, but it is a challenge. I looked at the other issue about trying to tweak the revenue. So if they were patrolling more, they get the revenue. And I would say, Mr. Chairman, you probably know more about this than me, but looking into it, since it would affect every county in Virginia, it could potentially cause more trouble, I think, than this approach, which would be a town could opt in for the speed cameras if they wanted to. If they don't want to, they don't have to. So I thought that would be the least obtrusive way to try to address the problem in this town.
Okay. Thank you. Senator Favola.
I have a comment, and then I'm going to make a motion if you're ready for that. I just went on Google, and the little town of Hamilton in Loudoun has, of 2019, had a population of 567 people. That's pretty small. I cannot believe that the Loudoun County Police, or you have a sheriff's department, not a police department. I can't believe the Loudoun County Sheriff's Department would focus much time, energy, or even their resources on the little town of Hamilton. I am sympathetic to the fact that safety is an issue, people speed through if they think they can get away with it. This this traffic camera, if you will be at least acknowledged and visible. I don't think it causes any harm. Your bill would apply to towns across the Commonwealth, as I understand it, all towns across the Commonwealth. I think this is a safety measure, and I think it actually saves our sheriffs and police their precious time and effort. I move that we report the bill.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to report the bill. Clerk, if you could open the roll.
Ayes 5, noes 9, 1 abstention.
I thank the committee and Chairman.
Thank you so much, and we'll keep looking for a solution here. Okay, could we take Senator McClellan next, who needs to get to finance, and then Senator Surville will get yours, and then Senator Boysko will have you following things up. That's okay. All right.
Mine shouldn't take very long, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Senator McClellan, you want to do it from your chair?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So Senate Bill 478 amends the enabling legislation for the Capital Region Airport Commission, which is the entity that runs the Richmond International Airport. It allows it to indemnify and insure its directors and staff against claims, insurance claims, and it would allow them to establish and support one or more foundations that would encourage careers in aviation and assist the public in aviation travel. So this foundation could support efforts, particularly in our school groups, to help encourage young people to enter the aviation field. And Peter Broadbent is here on behalf of the airport to answer any questions that you all have.
Okay, thank you. Peter, good to see you.
Good to see you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Peter Broadbent with the Christian Barton firm, representing Richmond International Airport, and we thank the senator very, very much for carrying this bill, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee has.
Any questions for Mr. Broadbent?
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Suderline.
As I understand the bill, it appears that there's two primary purposes. One is regarding the charitable donations, and the second, clarifying that they won't be subject to freedom of information.
Well, the Freedom of Information Act clause simply would apply to any foundation which is set up.
So it does not affect the actual airport?
It would not affect the airport itself at all, which is subject to FOIA.
All right, great. I've got no more questions.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Broadbent or for Senator McClellan?
Move the report.
Well, hold on. Anyone in the audience care to speak in favor of the bill, either in person or virtually?
Mr. Chair, we have a speaker.
Okay. Megan Ryan, could you unmute and give us just whether you support the bill and why? Could we keep it to 30 seconds? We're kind of running out of time here.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I jumped the gun. I am speaking in opposition. Megan Ryan with the Virginia Coalition for Open Government. And we oppose the creation of another entity whose mission is to take on particular work of the public body, but who would not be publicly accountable. These entities started with university foundations for sure, but they're now found throughout the Code of Virginia. They handle large sums of money. They share public employees with the public body, but they don't have to disclose anything about how they operate. This isn't directed particularly at the airport authority. It's a systemic problem that tries to get around the admittedly clunky rules of government. But those rules are clunky and hard to handle because they promote fiscal responsibility and public transparency. And so we ask that this provision be stricken. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Ryan. All right. I don't believe we have any other speakers. And so with that, Senator McClellan, any closing remarks or response to the last witness?
No, again, the FOIA exemption is only for the work of the foundation, which would be a 501c3 organization making charitable donations and providing assistance to, get more people to work in the airline industry.
Move the report, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion to report. Do we have a second? We have a motion to report in a second. Clerk, would you open the rolls?
Ayes 15, no zero.
Ayes 15, no zero. The bill passes. Senator Survell, you have your second bill.
I do, Mr. Chairman. Do you want me to do it from here?
That'd be great.
Okay. The second bill I have, I believe, is Senate Bill 247. Is that right?
All right.
Yep. Mr. Chairman, this is a bill just to clarify a statute we passed, I believe, 2 years ago. And I'm carrying this with Delegate Kilgore on the other side. And basically, this just makes two clarifications to the vulnerable user statute that we passed. I think it was in 2020. So the two changes are this. If you remember this statute, basically what it does is it seeks to make it easier to effectively hold people accountable who injure cyclists or pedestrians, vehicles who injure cyclists and pedestrians, because often the cyclists are pedestrian, they're concussed or they're dead or they can't remember what happened. And it makes it very hard to convict them of reckless driving because of a case called Powers v. Commonwealth. And so, number one, this adds an optional, not mandatory, optional license suspension, 6-month license suspension, which is already authorized for reckless driving. So it makes the penalties parallel, identical for reckless in a violation of this. And the second thing it does is there was a concern that because it said the victim had to be seriously injured, that didn't include victims that were killed. And so this just makes clear that if somebody is actually killed, this statute applies, as opposed to somebody who's seriously injured, which I think is what the intent was, but there was a concern amongst both the advocates and Commonwealth attorneys that a driver who was, a victim, pedestrian cyclist who was killed might not be covered by this. And so that's basically the two things the bill does. I don't believe it has a fiscal impact. I've heard of no opposition. I believe there's a few people that want to testify in favor of it, and I would hope we'd report it.
All right. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to, or virtually who wishes to speak in favor of the bill?
Mr. Chair, we have one virtual speaker.
Okay. Mr. Doyle, could you unmute yourself and try to keep your testimony to 1 minute?
Sure. So my name is Mike Doyle. I'm the founder of the Northern Virginia Families for Safe Streets. We have chapters in Alexandria, Arlington, and Fairfax County. And there's also a Families for Safe Streets chapter in Richmond. And joining us is the Virginia Bicycle Federation in this encouragement or supplement of this vulnerable road user bill. We think this amendment is important because there are still situations, and we've had members of our groups who've lost family members, so they are killed, but they're having trouble getting anything other than a failure to yield. And reckless driving is very difficult. So this vulnerable road user and being able to have not only bodily injury, but fatalities, it gives a recourse and a better sense of a penalty on this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Doyle.
Right.
Anyone else in the queue? Okay. Is there anyone who would like to speak in the audience in favor of the bill?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Sarah Taylor, City of Alexandria. I actually think Mike Doyle speaks much better to this bill than anyone from the city could. His lived experience on this is something that's really been reflected in what Senator Survell and what Delegate Kilgore is working on. It is something that has the support of our police department, our Commonwealth's attorney, our pedestrian and traffic safety folks. To bring all those folks together in support of anything is slightly miraculous, and so we're grateful for cleaning this bill up and making sure it applies to all the situations it should apply to. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Anyone in the audience or virtually to speak against the bill? Have any issues with it? Okay, we operate on a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to report the bill. Clerk, could you open the rolls?
Ayes 14, no zero.
Ayes 14, no zero. The bill reports. Senator Boysko.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we pass SB 445 for the week. I'm still working out.
Very good. That is fine. We will, without objection, take the bill by for the week. I have a quickie here just to finish this up. This started out as a bill there's a fee for a virtual registration of $10, and DMV wanted to change that to up to $10. It was not a significant bill, but they added some other cleanup language. And what Senate Bill 34 does is the DMV may issue an electronic registration card to an individual who holds a valid physical registration card that the department is authorized to issue. If the department issues an electronic registration card, the registration card shall be issued in addition to and not instead of the physical registration card for which a person is eligible. I already explained the part about changing it from a $10 fee to an up to $10 fee, so that's a break to the holder of the document. The bill clarifies the Department of Motor Vehicles' authority to issue electronic vehicle registration cards and permits a driver to use an electronic registration card for proof of registration in place of the physical registration card in any instances, including traffic stops. The bill also reduces the cost of the issuance of the electronic credentials. Acceptance of an electronic registration card shall be at the discretion of the person to whom it is presented and may be satisfied by displaying or possessing an electronic registration. The possession or display of any electronic registration card shall not relieve a person from the requirements of any provision in the Code of Virginia, the Virginia Administrative Code. The bill also clarifies that for any type of duplication of vehicle registration cards, certificate of title, license plates, and decals, the duplication shall cost the replacement amount, which ranges from $1 to $10, and that's what the bill does. Excuse me, and that is a substitute. So can I have we have a motion. We have a substitute before us. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Substitute is before us as it has been presented. Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you. Now, this is, the department shall assess a fee up to $10. It's per year now. It's not just a one-time shot. It's per year.
Mm-hmm. Right now, it's $10. Right now, it's $10. We're changing it to up to $10.
No, I understand, but a year.
It's still per year, according. Yes.
Yes.
That doesn't change.
Lisa, could you?
Yeah.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. The fee is up to $10. Currently, it would be $10 a year flat, and now it would be up to. But yes, still per year.
Per year.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Spruill?
Thank you. Being from the country, can someone explain to me what the up to so mean? Could it be $2?
Could be.
$3?
But that's up to the department to determine. But they didn't feel it needed to be as high as $10 automatically.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Do you really truly believe that the department can do something less than $10?
Let's hear from Linda Ford from
Oh, bless your heart, Linda, bless your heart.
Acting Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Yes, this legislation, or the bill was in, or the legislation was there, already in place back in 2016, 2017, when we were doing a proof of concept. At that time, we were told by our vendor there would be a substantial upfront cost and a lot of additional costs. Since that time, things have been refined. We just signed a new contract with our vendor, and so we're working in earnest towards a mobile driver's license. We know that it's not going to be anywhere near $10, whether it's per year or per, we'll even it out. And so it will be a very small fee is what we anticipate, frankly.
And it's optional.
But because we're still at the beginning stages, we don't know quite what that fee is going to be.
And people can still use a physical.
Absolutely. Physical will always be provided.
Physical document. All right. Any other questions? Huh?
Does it have to go to finance?
I'm teasing. My expert down here, my phone a friend here says no. So I believe we have a motion and a second on the bill yet, do we?
Yes.
Okay, so clerk, could you open the roll?
Ayes 15, no zero.
Ayes 15, no zero. The bill reports. That completes our docket for the day. If there's nothing else, the committee will rise.
Same.